And I don't want to wake up one morning and find that my Rice Krispie treat is gone. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to those who are new here. My name is Kirsten. I typically post home videos as well as just lifestyle content. So if that interests you, then be sure to stick around. Today I'm talking about all things living alone. So the pros, the cons, we're gonna get into it. I've also posted a video on the pros and cons of living in a studio, so if that interests you, I'll just leave it up above. But without further ado, let's jump right into the good, the bad, and the ugly about living alone. So I'll start off on a high note with a pro. One of the best things I find about living alone is the fact that you don't need to socialize after work. I generally, when I come home, I need kind of peace and quiet just to recharge my body and my mind, especially with my job where I have been working in person for the last 2 years in the pandemic when most people are working from home. So I feel like I'm just very social throughout the day. I do a lot of talking. I'm listening to children. I'm listening to parents. I'm listening to other teachers. And when I get home, all I want to do is sit down, lay down, watch TV. I do like the background noise, but I think just the idea of having to socialize with another human being after doing so much socializing throughout the day feels like a lot to me. So I do like living alone for that reason. I think it just gives you that freedom to recharge and relax and do as you please when you get home. So that's my number one pro for living alone. Now getting into the not so great parts, my first con is that when you live alone, you really don't have much help. So for example, I had a foot injury last June. I'm sure we all remember. I'm trying not to think about those times, but I was in a boot, I was in crutches, I had to have a knee scooter, and I had no help around the apartment, and it was really hard. Thankfully for me, I do have family and friends that live in New York, so I was able to call upon them if I needed. But of course, you don't want to burden anyone, so I really was like scooting around the apartment or like on crutches and trying to hold something when both of my hands needed to be on the crutches. It just didn't work. So it's definitely a con. Also, just in general, you want help for things like zipping up your dresses. I mean, I think we've all experienced that where you're going out, you're ready, you're cute, but then you just can't get that zipper up and you don't know what to do. So I luckily have really long arms. That's to my benefit. But I did think about that because the other day, I think I had like a corset top on and I just could not zip it up. I was like doing all the maneuvers, and there is that like hanger trick where you attach the hanger to your zipper and you like pull the hanger, but I just can't be bothered. So that is something that you definitely have to consider if you're living alone. For the second pro to living alone, one thing I really love is that you don't have to be conscious about noise. You don't have to be conscious about cooking something that your roommate doesn't like or your partner doesn't like. You are just free to do as you please. So often I am just aware of, my neighbors and stuff like that if I'm playing music, but really the reality of it is that you don't have to worry about someone in the next room or someone in the living room space that you're in not liking the music that you're playing or thinking it's too loud or annoyed by the smells in the space when you're cooking, or just worry about feeding somebody else. I mean, I am able to cook when I please. I'm able to not cook when I please. I really just have to listen to my body and what I need, and if that means having a dance party at 9 p.m., then I'm gonna do it because I live alone, and that's one of the perks to being by yourself. And that brings me to my next con, which is I do like to have guests over, and that's great, but I find if I have a guest over for a few hours, or even if sometimes they spend the night, the next day or whenever they leave, I get so lonely because I kind of get used to their company. So for me, that's definitely a big con, is having people over and then getting used to that sense of comfort or that company, and then when they leave, I feel lonely for some reason. I know a lot of times when people have guests over, they're like, yes, can't wait for them to leave. I want to do my stuff. I want to be at peace. But for me, I crave that after being with them for a little bit. It's kind of a weird concept, but I get lonely when my company leaves. So it's definitely something that I've figured out as I've lived alone in my space, and it just is what it is. I mean, I do get lonely for that night, and then the next morning I'm like fine and relaxed and chilling. So it's not a big deal, but that is something that I've thought about. And if you're that kind of person, or if you're similar to me, that might be something that you also will think about when you're moving into your own space. Okay, the third pro is that when you're living alone, you can be as clean or as messy as you want. So one really tricky part about finding a roommate or living with a roommate, I think, is compatibility. And you could choose a roommate who's like your best friend, and then it just completely ruins the friendship because you're not compatible as housemates. So maybe your roommate is a little messier than you'd like and doesn't do the dishes right away, and you're that person that needs the dishes out of the sink immediately. That could affect the relationship. For me, I like to clean when I want to clean, and I generally keep a tidy space, but throughout the week when I'm working, I don't have much time in the mornings to put things back or to run the dishwasher, things like that. And that's okay with me because I know that I'll get to it when I come back home. But if I was living with a roommate, it might be a different situation. So roommate compatibility is tough, and I think that a pro to living alone is just being able to live freely in your clean or messy space. The next con, I think it's one that we all go through, but it's that living alone can get scary, especially at night. So I might hear sounds in the hallway or sounds coming out of my window, and immediately I'm on high alert. I don't know if anyone else gets that feeling. I do not like hearing little sounds, a thump, voices in the hallway. It just gets me freaked out. This happens most often when I'm in the shower and I can hear the doors slamming in the hallway, like if someone's going into their apartment, and I just immediately, what goes through my mind is the door to my apartment just slammed because someone is in here while I'm in the shower, and it just freaks me out. So living alone can get a little scary. You don't have anyone else to rely on there. It comes with the territory. I just have to like constantly tell myself, no, you're crazy, it's fine. You have a lock on your door and the latch is closed, you're good. One of my next points, which is really the great thing about living alone, is that you get to learn more about yourself. You get to learn about your likes and your dislikes. One thing that I learned about myself is just how much I talk to myself. I mean, it's kind of nice that I get to do YouTube because I get to talk to the camera and I get to talk to you all, but throughout the day when I'm doing like my little tasks, even when I'm just getting a snack, I'm like, ooh, yes, this is good. Like I'm talking to myself constantly, and I never used to do that when I was living like at my mom's house. I just used to talk to her. I mean, you know, it just like would feel more weird if you're talking to yourself and someone else is in the room. So I never used to do that, but now that I live alone, I talk to myself a lot, and that's fine. I'm getting to learn more about what I need when I'm in my apartment. Like I have learned how I don't like mess or just little things like that. I don't know, you just really learn about yourself, and I think especially in a pandemic where we're not going out so much and a lot of people are really spending so much time at home, I have really gotten the chance to just pick up on certain habits of mine and just really get to know who I am. Now for my fourth con, I did mention earlier how when you're living alone, you don't have help for things like, you know, if you have a foot injury or if you need help around the space. And my next con kind of goes along with that, but it's that you have no one to rely on. So I have 2 sets of keys, and for me, I found that often I'd leave my keys inside my apartment and then be locked out. And obviously, I had no one in the apartment or anyone else who had my keys to be like, hey, can you let me in? Which like I was so used to doing in my previous space when I had someone who I lived with. But lucky enough for me, my neighbor, she is like one of my best friends. She's not actually my neighbor, she lives a few blocks away. But I just ended up giving her my keys because I was like, hey, I don't have anyone that I live with, and you're close enough where like if I'm in a pinch, I could just run over there, get my keys, and then get in. But if you're living alone, that's something to consider, that you have to really be extra responsible because there's no one else who can kind of pick up that slack for you. So that's my next con about living alone, is that you really have to be super responsible with those little things. Okay, I'm ready for my last pro. If you know me, you know that I'm a huge snacker. This is another thing that I recently discovered about myself. I think I always kind of knew it, but like seeing my pantry, that's all for me, by the way, I just like fully realized that I'm a big snacker. Anyway, back to the pro. The pro is that you don't have to share your things with anybody. You don't have to share your belongings. You don't have to share your snacks. I know for me, I have lived in one of those apartments where everyone is labeling their stuff in the fridge. Like you literally have to write your name on it because people will steal your stuff, or like, I don't know, if they're not contributing to the groceries. I don't want to deal with that. I just really don't. So I love that I can just buy my own things and I don't have to worry about anyone else eating it, or like running out of milk because I didn't know that my roommate used it for their cereal this morning. You know, it's just very minor things like that that make all the difference. And for me, it's a huge pro of living alone. I really enjoy my snacks, and I don't want to wake up one morning and find that my Rice Krispie treat is gone. I'm so ridiculous, but I hope you get what I mean. And then on the other hand of that, the con is that all the responsibility is yours. So you do have to pay for all of the groceries. You don't have anyone to split the cost with. You have to pay for all of the rent. You have to pay for all of the utilities, and you're responsible for cleaning the whole space. It's kind of like a give and take here, but at the end of the day, I will take living alone over living with a roommate. I recently shared on my Instagram that I was watching that new Netflix docu-series called Worst Roommates Ever. And if that doesn't sell you on living alone, then I don't know what will. I was shook. It got dark really fast, and I mean, people are in really unsafe situations out there. That's all I'll say about that. If you want to see more, go watch the show. But I just like was really affirmed in my choice to live alone with that docu-series because it was really wild. So yeah, I am very happy in my space. With all that being said, I feel very comfortable with living alone, and truly before I got the actual experience of living alone, I didn't know if I would be able to do it. I do think I'm very independent, but I was very dependent on my mom to borrow her car whenever I wanted, for her to go with me places if I didn't want to go alone. Like that, I find I was kind of dependent on her for, and I'm just so glad to be able to have the experience of living alone in my 20s, because it creates a different level of independence that I just didn't know I even had. And of course in college I was living with like roommates and stuff, but it's not the same. It's really not the same as when like you're the sole caretaker of the space and the sole person who's responsible for things like rent and all that. So if you're considering living alone, yes, I recommend it as long as you feel comfortable and safe doing so. Again, like just check in with yourself, see how you're feeling about it. But I think it's one of the best decisions that I've made for myself, and I don't regret it, and I will likely live alone for another couple years, or as long as it takes me to, you know, settle down and stuff like that. So I hope that this video was helpful for you all. Like I said, I'm super happy and mostly feel very comfortable living alone. But here are just some of the, you know, goods and bads, just so that you can make your own choice in that regard. I hope you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment if you have any other suggestions on videos that I can make in the future. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye.